Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine and another week in the Cavern, which, if you remember from last week, is in the heart of the Drakensberg, and it's where I find myself at the end of probably the most arduous task I've ever undertaken, other than vast wine tastings, which was walking, hiking, trekking 100 kilometres through the Drakensberg Mountains. But I wasn't alone, because with me was a man who was famously described by the philosopher Jamie Dornan as the most important man in Ireland for 15 years. Before we get into the wine, Bryan O'Driscoll, you're looking in remarkably good nick for a man who's just trekked 100 kilometres in 4 days.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Day one was tough. But seeing the pain etched on your face gave me newfound energy that I didn't know that I actually possessed. So
you drew off my pain and sadness to make yourself go better.
Is that not how the world works, no?
Schadenfreude, I think.
Schadenfreude is correct, yeah.
So it's fantastic to have you in South Africa. We've not always liked having you in South Africa because you've normally been an enormous thorn in the side of South African rugby sides. But you're here supporting Laureus, supporting South Africa, having a great time, and now celebrating the end of a terrific few days with Laureus. We've got some lovely wine to celebrate with. Before we go into it though, how much of a role does wine play in the life of Bryan O'Driscoll?
More now than it did as a professional rugby player. I wish I knew more about it than I do. My limited knowledge does allow me to specify exactly what my passion for wine entails. When I come to drinking red, it tends to be a Pinot. When I come to drinking white, it's a Sauvignon Blanc. Also largely from the Marlborough region. But you know what? I'm always open to new vineyards, new tastes.
So absolutely anything white as long as it's Marlborough, and anything red as long as it's Pinot Noir.
So I kind of made this show quite easy for you, so you're welcome. Off we go. Let's see what you have for me.
Well, just before we go into it, I spend a fair amount of time. You're obviously from the south. I was born in Belfast. I go back quite a lot. I spent a bit of time there. What I've noticed in the last 10, 15 years is where you could go into a restaurant or a pub in Ireland and you might find 2 or 3 wines of fairly questionable origin and then thousands of litres of Guinness. Mm-hmm. Suddenly wines become a far more accessible space if you're looking for something to drink when you go out to a pub or a restaurant.
I would agree with that. I think we've probably become a little bit more educated in understanding what we're after, and the appreciation that the consumer knows a tad more than they did maybe 5-10 years ago, and so you have to supply exactly what they're looking for or something in that vicinity. So yeah, I guess when I probably do my most wine drinking at home. Easy to open a bottle of wine amongst yourself and your wife. I like the 4-to-1 ratio that happens in our house. It seems
she has 4 glasses and you have 1.
Yeah, well, there's only one person who can wear the pants in the house.
And it's not you.
No, it's certainly not me. So yeah, it's something that, like I said, I should probably invest a bit more time, because educated, sophisticated people like yourself seem to know a little bit about it, and ultimately I'd like to sneer at Jamie Dornan's lack of knowledge when he comes to ordering a nice bottle of red.
Well, you can sneer a lot about him. His level of education is fairly limited, but we'll help you in that particular space, because we've got a couple. I'm going to leave the red for just a second. You did say you liked some Sauvignon Blanc. This is some wine from some good friends of mine, the Newton Johnsons. Bevan's the kind of guy I think you'd get on with quite well. He looks after some great wine, but he doesn't really want to make wine, he wants to surf. He's just a real free spirit, loves life, but they make some exceptional wine. Their Pinot Noir, sadly, we don't have here in the Cavern tonight. Next time you drop by and you come and stay with the Nichols, we'll sort you out with
Fine, I'll come back.
But in the interim, this is their 2018 Sauvignon Blanc, so let's give it a pour and see.
How was the 2018 year? So again, you'll know year on year.
I think you probably find that it with the white wine it doesn't have quite as much an impact as the red because the white tends to get bottled a little quicker. This particular area, it was a nice year. Newton Johnson sits in a valley. There's some lovely breezes come in. It's not too far from the sea, so you've got a really fresh Sauvignon Blanc. We find some South African Sauvignon Blanc can be really acidic, takes the roof off your mouth. This is not one of those, I think. I'm not always the biggest fan of Sauvignon Blanc because I think a lot of it can be a bit young and a bit green and a bit acidic.
What do you like?
I love a Pinot Noir. In fact, I've got some great Pinot Noir at my cellar at home. So next time your far more famous spouse comes out to shoot a movie in South Africa, you can come and bring the kids around. We'll have a few bottles of Pinot Noir.
Well, we do know that it'll be 4-1, so yeah, expect to open at least one bottle.
But I love exploring all sorts of wine because I think there's a different story to all wine and there's merit to all of it. But I'm interested to see what you think of this particular one because you like a Sauvignon Blanc.
I do. I don't know whether it's as a result of my parents never drinking Chardonnay at home. I do like a Sancerre as well, but I feel as though if you're going to get a bad Sauvignon Blanc, it's going to be a hell of a lot better than a bad Chardonnay or something else.
We had a big problem in South Africa where for a long time Chardonnay was made with so much oak that it tasted like you were eating your way through a branch,
right?
And it just wasn't really that much fun to drink.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more subtle. But Sauvignon Blanc, I think, is a really nice, accessible, and probably good for us as elite athletes who've just done 100 kilometers through the Drakensberg.
I must say, when I drink my white wine, I do like it ice cold as well. So how does that sit with you?
So great when you're refreshing yourself, but if you get it too cold, it's very similar to if you add ice blocks to whiskey. You're kind of closing up the notes and you're losing some of the flavour to it. So with a Sauvignon Blanc, you throw in the ice, it's very refreshing, but I think you lose some of the flavour of the wine. And so you probably want it just a little bit warmer, and the ice blocks maybe negate that. So if you want to get the best out of a Sauvignon, just as if you want to get the best out of a whiskey, I probably wouldn't throw in quite so many ice blocks, especially you live in Ireland where the average temperature is about -11, so you probably don't need to throw too much ice into it.
Every day's a learning day.
Oh, okay, so nice fresh sort of grassy nose to it.
Yes, I like it. I like it. I'd like it more if
It's 17 blocks of ice.
If it was colder.
All right, which is fair enough.
But when I drink, red wine is the exception. Every other drink that I drink is ice cold, and partly because I keep my drinks in the back garden, but also partly because when I drink for refreshment as well as taste.
Which is more than fair enough. And I think it speaks to, really, if you want to drink your wine with half a shot of Coca-Cola, basically, if you like it, then you're drinking it the right way. And it's kind of what we try and do with Dan Really Likes Wine, find a way that you like to drink wine. So if you like your wine with a bit of ice, if it's refreshing, if that's enjoyable.
You see, it's not even with ice. So when I have my bottle of Sauvignon Blanc at home, I will put it into the freezer and I will freeze it to a point prior to it actually icing up. So that's where I want it, and then drink it at fast speed so it remains as cold as possible.
While putting the second bottle into the freezer and just preparing yourself to follow it.
Well, that actually happens 15 minutes after the first one's initially put in.
You're a professional, Mr. O'Driscoll.
Well, listen, I might be a novice in some regards, but I know my way around.
A bottle or two of Sauvignon Blanc.
Correct.
We're one from one, I'd like to think, in terms of wine that Bryan O'Driscoll likes.
I'm buying multiple cases already. Good.
Right. Well, on the pound, you can do quite happily.
Actually, it's the euro. I live in Ireland, but we're only splitting hairs there.
Well, it's all part of Wales. I'll send another glass your way. So I had a look. There's a fantastic section of wine here in the Cavern. I really like it. They've got as I mentioned last week, a really interesting selection, some terrific value. And we've been drinking some Hartenberg Shiraz earlier today. They've got some of the 2015 Tambourus Kloof Syrah drinking beautifully. Just a really nice range. But what I found here is a wine that I think has a little relevance for both of us because it relates to a mutual friend, a South African gentleman by the name of Johan Rupert. And we, of course, both know him through a golf tournament that is probably, with the exception of our Just Challenge Africa, the coolest event of the year to go to.
It's undoubtedly the greatest invite to get in a calendar year. So this, before I look at the label, before I look at the the wine itself, before I smell it, before I taste it, this is an exceptional wine.
Well, it's not just a political statement to make, but it's a very judicious one. Because one of the advantages that the guys at Anthony Rupert have is that they spend a lot of time keeping their wine back. And although Brian and I haven't shared this exact wine, we have shared a similar one, because if we go back to 2 years ago,
I remember.
we had the blend.
I
It was
remember.
you, me, Jamie Dornan, and that hugely overrated actor from Northern Ireland, Stevie Martin, who I think runs London and spends more
Emin
time
Sisachi,
travelling.
yeah.
Sisachi, Peter Jones from
Peter
Drakensberg
Jones,
was
correct,
with us,
yeah.
and Matthew Good was with us as well.
Correct,
So it was,
yeah.
And basically, we had 6 guys, and we spent about 2 hours talking about how much TV we should let our kids watch. That was pretty much the evening. But we
Jamie
had
Dornan and a number of successful people.
Yeah, exactly. Jesse Dornan, one of my favourite actors. And we tried some of the Anthony Rupert blend. So I thought I'd bring out this. It's not the Pinot Noir. I know you love your Pinot Noir. We're going to get you some.
So what is it? Sorry.
So this is a Cabernet Sauvignon. So it's going to
Okay.
be a lot bigger. It's going to be a lot
Yeah.
stronger. It's 7 years old now. It's had a lot of time both in barrel and in bottle to develop into a really big, strong red wine. The kind of wine you want to wash down as a rugby player 7 kilograms of steak with before you go and bench press buses and then go and run through walls.
Do you find yourself drinking less of this as a result of the full-bodied or fuller-bodied nature of it?
Not at all. I love Cabernet Sauvignon. I think it's such a classic red wine. I tend to drink a huge amount of wine because it's a business. I'm tasting stuff all the time. But if I want to go back to just a real classic, then a good old school Cabernet Sauvignon with a ribeye steak, for me, is hard to beat.
I possibly could have done with some of this wine about 5k from the end of today's walk, so let's see what it
Well,
does.
maybe some retrospective help. You can see it's a lovely, beautiful, deep red colour.
It is, so, which immediately is something that I would look at and think there's a ceiling on how much I'm capable of drinking. Not that I'm an excessive drinker when it comes to wine, but the lightness of the Pinots is why I just find it easier to take, easier to digest, easier to drink without thinking about, if you like.
Sort of CJ Stunder 60 minutes into a violent ruck. What are you picking up on the nose?
Yeah, just as after 60 minutes when he takes his socks off. No, it's like again. I don't get a specific scent from that. It smells of something that I would like. See, I'm trying to think what I taste in that. I like it.
Which is the first point of departure. It makes you feel pensive.
No, I'm just trying to think what it is. I'm trying to
Yeah.
give some detail to why it's quite nice.
Which
It's a little heavier than I ordinarily would go for, as we have discussed.
yeah.
But quite differently, there's a little bit more than the initially what's on your palate. There's I would say a more pleasant aftertaste that I quite like, but I don't know why.
Which is absolutely fine. It's something we really try and promote with the show, that if you like a wine, then that's fantastic. And
What do you see in it, or what do you?
it's like a little bit of licorice on it, a little bit of cinnamon. There's a nice full what I really like about this is that you drink it and it doesn't just disappear. Sometimes you drink a wine and it vanishes off your palate. It's got a really nice, strong structure, so it sits on your palate. You drunk it, but you still know it's there, and it's just a really warm, refreshing glass of wine.
So I'm 40 years of age, and you would have thought that I've been in lots of environments where there's been very good wine served and some average wine served, and I don't know, do I have enough of an appetite to go that extra mile to find out exactly what's great and what's fantastic, what's not, because I do currently know what I do quite like, and I don't think I'm so passionate enough about wine to explore more, and maybe that will come with time, but the little circle that I work in, and this is very, very nice, don't get me wrong, you know, you give me a bigger Bordeaux, and it would be difficult for me to, you know, to be positive about it and give it the affirmation that it perhaps needs on a different palate. But I know what I like, and I'm quite content with that. This could fit into that regard, though.
Well, I think what you've done, possibly inadvertently, is sum up exactly what the wine industry needs, which is people who understand what they like, they're comfortable with it, they like to push the odd boundary from time to time, but they don't feel pressurized into drinking stuff just because somebody else said you should drink it. You know what you like, you're happy with it, that's important.
I find that quite a lot in company, in well-esteemed company that seem to know their wines, and that's fine, and it can be a bravado thing, but I'll go with the flow and not make a fool of myself with it. But ultimately, if I'm picking the wine, or if I'm at dinner and be it with my wife or be out with friends and someone asks me to choose what wine I want, if I'm going to pick a red wine, I might pick a Cab Sauv, but in all likelihood I'm going to pick something quite light and quite refreshing that I like, and provided they want it too. I'd like to think I'm a generous enough host to know that you got to ask other people's opinions, but yet that doesn't mean that I've shut off all the heavier, bigger bodies reds that are in existence.
All right, well, what I'm going to promise to do is to get you some great South African Pinot Noir, because we do some terrific stuff, and I think you'll like it. I think you've enjoyed this. You've had a good crack at our mutual friend Johan's Cabernet Sauvignon as well, and it's a lovely bottle of wine. And so that simply leaves us to say congratulations on getting through 4 days of the Drakensberg. Enjoy the wine to celebrate, and hopefully we'll see plenty of South African wine featuring on the Bryan O'Driscoll palette over the years to come, because we like to think that just as you did a pretty good job on the rugby field, so we do a pretty good job in the world of wine, and we hope there's plenty more of it coming your way. So a chance to drink some wine with the man that Jamie Dornan said was the most important man in Ireland for 15 years. He might be even more important if he keeps telling people that South African wine is the way to go. It's 2 weeks in a row with Pick and Pay from the Cavern here in the Drakensberg, back home in the cellar next week to try some more wine. But for now, we're going to finish off the rest of this and have some very, very important discussions about why Bryan thinks the Springboks will win the Rugby World Cup. Cheers.